On this episode of Maritime Insights from a deck officer, GCaptain reported engine fire leaves Finnlines RoRo adrift in English Channel. Well, it wasn't actually an engine fire. A volunteer lifeboat crew with the UK's Royal National Lifeboat Institution, RNLI, launched early Tuesday. Well, it wasn't actually Tuesday morning to assist the 33,000-ton roll-on, roll-off cargo vessel Finnwave after the ship issued a MayDay distress call. Well, it wasn't actually a MayDay distress call, reporting an engine fire approximately 11 miles southeast of Eastbourne. Now, I'll tell you what really happened. Where on the ship was the fire and what could have possibly started this fire? And also, what are these two red lights? I'll explain. Also, the ship had a blackout right over here, so it lost all power. So how was it able to still make a turn right here? On this episode, I will do a deep dive analysis on this incident and give you insider information of what really happened on board this RoRo ship. And I'll tell you about the emergency procedures and how the crew responds to a fire on board a ship. In this case, in the engine room. Spoiler alert, we are the fire department and we did fire drills each month to prepare for a real life fire. I have worked as a deck officer on 3 different RoRos in the North Sea. The first one is the Zeebrugge from Wagenborg. Remember that name? I have a story about that here in a second. But we were leaving from Zeebrugge, Belgium to Göteborg, Sweden, and we went back and forth. Now, the Finnwave that we're talking about now, they also left from Zeebrugge, Belgium. Then the second ship I worked on was the Norbank from P&O North Sea Ferries, and we were going between Liverpool and Dublin. And then the third RoRo I worked on was the Assie Scanlink, also from Wagenborg, and we were going from Terneuzen in the Netherlands to Hareholmen in Sweden. Luckily, I have never been involved in real big fires on board, but one of the RoRos I worked on, which I mentioned earlier, the Zeebrugge, they had a trailer with hazardous material that got dislodged due to a brutal North Sea storm, and a violent fire broke out on the ship. And the fire was so violent, as you can see, that the crew that I knew had to abandon ship with the lifeboat in a storm, in heavy seas, in the middle of the night. But I will do a separate video on that incident. So if you're interested in that, then hit that subscribe button right now. To give you some more context about this incident, let's finish reading the article. So the Eastbourne RNLI's all-weather lifeboat Esme Anderson battled moderate seas and force 5 winds to reach the vessel. By the time the lifeboat crew had arrived, the Finnwave's crew had successfully extinguished the fire, though the 270-meter ship had lost all engine power. I looked at the entire timeline of this incident, and I must say that they were all very professional, from the Finnwave's crew to the lifeboat Esme Anderson and the Coast Guard. They were all very organized. This all happened very quickly, but they responded like amazingly. So well done to all of you guys, because this could have been a lot worse, but you guys handled it fantastic. The RNLI team confirmed that no crew members required evacuation and were requested to stand by the drifting vessel while its crew worked to deploy the ship's anchor. The lifeboat remained on scene for over an hour in challenging sea conditions until the anchor was successfully deployed and holding. Great job. Then, the Southern Coast Guard eventually confirmed the vessel was safely anchored and the lifeboat was released and returned to station. The Coast Guard continues to maintain contact with the Finnwave while repairs are completed. So I did some more research on this incident and I came across this article on the Argus, and it says Finnlines cargo ship suffers engine fire near Eastbourne. Now, like I said, it's not an engine fire, it's an engine room fire, and we'll go over that here in a second. But if we scroll further down, we can see that a distress call was sent out just after 5 a.m. The RNLI Eastbourne said at 5:21 a.m. on November 12th, which is a Wednesday and not a Tuesday like was reported on GCaptain, our all-weather lifeboat Esme Anderson launched to assist a 33,000-ton roll-on, roll-off cargo vessel 11 miles southeast of Eastbourne after the ship issued a distress call reporting an engine fire. Here is some more interesting information. A spokesperson for HM Coast Guard, and HM stands for Her Majesty. Now, how fancy and royal is that? Said at 5:14 a.m., HM Coast Guard was made aware of a pan-pan distress signal from a vessel reporting a fire on board 12 nautical miles off Eastbourne. Now, on GCaptain it was reported that it was a MayDay, but it's actually a pan-pan distress signal, and there's a big difference. A pan-pan is for urgency, so when there is an emergency but it is urgent. A MayDay is when it's life-threatening, you call a MayDay. So for example, when the ship is sinking or when somebody needs immediate help because they are possibly dying. When people are in real distress, that is when you call a MayDay. But when you have an engine failure and that results into a loss of power and a blackout, then that is not a reason to call a MayDay. Also, the ship also wasn't in immediate danger of grounding, so that is why the pan-pan distress signal was the right thing to do. The pan-pan distress signal is not only important for the HM Coast Guard to send a lifeboat, for example, but it is also important for the vessels that are in the vicinity of the Finnwave to be made aware that they lost all power and that they have to stay clear of them because they are not under command. Also, a spokesperson for Finnlines said a small fire occurred in the engine room. So it was not an engine fire, it's a small engine room fire of MS Finnwave. Why I get ads for underwear, female underwear. Oh my God. Anyway, while the vessel was en route from Zeebrugge, Belgium, I'm getting toy boats. Oh my God, what is that? I'm thrown off by the female underwear ads. So let's see the route of the Finnwave. So they left Zeebrugge, Belgium right over here. They made their way into the traffic separation scheme. And this is actually quite nice because it separates the traffic. And obviously you're super busy in Dover Strait and the English Channel. So this separates traffic going in both directions. And if you merge, then you have to merge as perpendicular as possible. So in a 90-degree angle, pretty much. So you can see that here. They come in and they make it almost like a 90-degree angle into the traffic separation scheme, make their way through Dover Strait. They were going about 18 knots over here. But then over here, you can see at 5:10, they were only doing 6 knots. So probably around 5 o'clock, that is when they lost power. They had an engine fire and they lost power. Of course, you can get a fire in the engine room in multiple different ways. You can think of like a fuel line or an oil line that is leaking onto something that is hot and that can create a fire. Or maybe somebody is welding or grinding and it is sparking and it ignites something else. But it can also be something electrical, like a shortcut or a short circuit or an overload of some kind. And that can trigger like a electrical fire in the engine room. And because they extinguished it rather quickly, I think it was probably a electrical fire. Also, I'm thinking that, actually that's the main reason I'm thinking that, is because it triggered a complete blackout, a total loss of power. And that means that it's probably something electrical that then stops everything from working. Now, when you have a total power loss or a blackout, there is still equipment that needs to continue to work. For example, on the bridge, the navigation equipment needs to continue to work. So there's a battery pack on the bridge that is connected to, the radar and the electronic chart display and the radios and that kind of stuff so that you can still navigate. But you also need the rudder, of course, so you can still steer. So that is also part of that still working. It is not that when you have a total power loss that you cannot control the rudder anymore. And then, of course, in the engine control room, they also have equipment that needs to continue to be working. But as soon as you have a blackout, there is an emergency diesel generator that will kick in and that will give power to all the essential equipment that is necessary to start up an engine again and to get everything running again. So that is basically what is happening, and that is why they were also able to make this turn. So about here at this time at 5 a.m. in the morning, they were still doing 18.6 knots, but right after 5 o'clock, as was mentioned in the report, they started to, they had the engine fire that triggered the loss of power. And then here at 5:10, they were only doing 6 knots. Now, because of the momentum of the ship, at this point, they could still make a turn to starboard to go here and anchor right over there. So, of course, they cannot turn the engines back on and have power, but they had enough power to turn to starboard and then make their way here. Let's say you could not control the rudder from the bridge anymore, then you can manually go down to the steering gear room all the way in the aft of the ship, and you can manually control the rudder. There are 2 solenoid buttons, like for port and for starboard. Then you would call the bridge. There's a phone, and if there is no power, you have a phone, has a little wheel on it, and you can crank it. It will generate some electricity, so that you can then call the bridge and make a connection, and then they can give you either a heading to steer, or they say starboard 10 on the rudder. So there in the steering gear room, there is a gyro compass. So you can either steer a heading, or they will give you instructions, starboard 10, and there's a rudder angle indicator. So you can go to starboard 10, and then you wait for the next order. Now, right here, you can see the location where they dropped anchor, which is right outside the vessel traffic separation scheme right there. And this is Eastbourne right there. And you can see that they dropped it here on the water depth line of about 30 meters. It's like 27 right over there. Here it's 58. It's a little bit deep, so they wait a little bit further and they dropped the anchor there. Now, it was reported that there was a wind force 5. So you want quite a bit of anchor chain out. Wind force 5 is about 20 knots, and the waves will probably be around 1.5 to 2 meters or something like that. And you don't want to drift to the shore. So you want to put in quite a lot of anchor chain, somewhere between 5 and 7 times the water depth in this case. So let's say 6 times 27. So let's see how much that is. We do 6 times 27 is 162 meters of anchor chain. That's quite a lot, but yeah, it's windy. Now divide that by 27.4, which is the length of that's meters. Divide that by 27.4 meters, then that is 1 shackle. Then you need about 6 shackles of anchor chain in the water to safely stay in that position. The RNLI Lifeboat 1402, which is the Esme Anderson, they left from Eastbourne, and then around 6 a.m. in the morning on November 12th, they made their way out at sea. Now, they had to go through some locks, so they are in a marina over here, so they had to go through these locks here first, and then they made their way, as you can see here, on the track, and then they went to the same anchorage where the Finnwave was. They arrived there at 6:30. So once they got out the locks at around 6, half an hour later, they were on the scene and they were there to assist. And you can see their little track here. Now they left again at 7:40. So yeah, they didn't have much to do there, to be honest. If they already extinguished the fire and they were safely anchored, there is not much that they can do. But they are there standby in case something happens with the crew. So for example, if there was a fire and they had somebody that inhaled a lot of smoke and had to go to the hospital, then they would be there to get that crew member off the ship and to a hospital safely and quickly. Here are some cool photos that were taken by some crew members of the Esme Anderson, and they were posted on the Facebook page of the RNLI Eastbourne. And look at that, what a beautiful sunrise right over there. You can see a crew member right over here. You can see the Finnwave here. And they were just going around in circles to see if everything was okay. Here you can also see the Finnwave. Now, look at these two lights here in the mast. There's two red lights. That means that they are not under command. So that is to signal to the rest, hey, be careful, we are not under command. Please stay out of the way. And then here you can see actually they have the port side anchor is out. You can see the waves, they're about 1.5 to 2 meters, and a beautiful sunrise. And this is on the top of the lifeboat, where they have some equipment as the compass over here. And you can see that the Finnwave is pointing into a southeasterly direction. So they arrived at the anchorage around 6:37, which was about an hour and a half after they had their power loss. And then they dropped anchor. And then, of course, they had to assess the situation, what is going on, and how can we fix it to get back to port and get back underway. And luckily, they figured it out rather quickly. And as you can see, they already left again at 12:40. So this whole ordeal took about 7.5 hours. And then they made their way back to Zeebrugge instead of going straight to Ireland. Because that's probably closer and they didn't want to risk anything. So they made their way across the traffic separation scheme again in a mostly 90-degree angle, and they went around this RACON buoy, which is a radar beacon, and the B stands for Morse code B, so it will show on the radar as the Morse code letter B. So they went around that, then they went into the traffic separation scheme. You just follow the arrows, and here are some cardinals. So this is the east cardinal, so that means pass this on the east side, not on the west side, because you're gonna be in trouble. So you can see all the wrecks. There's so many wrecks, wreck. Also by the anchorage and everywhere here in the English Channel, there is wrecks like everywhere. Anyway, they continued. And then here there is a pilot station, but that's for Dunkirk. Here's another RACON. And then they made their way here. More cardinal buoys. Passed this on the north side, not on the south side. Bad. Pass on the north. Continue your way. Here's another pilot station for Dunkirk. And then over here there's a reporting station. So you have to report to West Hinder TSS. And then another reporting station there. And then you make your way through Akkard Bank. And I've gone through here a lot. And Wandelaar. And then into the port of Zeebrugge. Now, the cool thing is that if you work on ferries or RoRos and you go to these ports frequently, back and forth, the master will have a PEC, which is a pilot exemption certificate. Now, he won't just get it. You actually have to do a pilot exam for that. And once you have that, then you are allowed to go in and out these ports without a pilot, which is very nice. By the way, if you're enjoying my Maritime Insights so far and you're into shipping, then hit that like and subscribe button. Why is this important? Well, if you click like, then more people on YouTube will see this video, and that will also help grow the channel. Also, if you click subscribe, the channel also continues to grow, and I will be able to continue my Maritime Insights for you. So if you're enjoying my video so far, then click that like and subscribe button right now. Then the Finnwave arrived on November 12th at 21:20 UTC in Zeebrugge. And then I went to the website of Finnlines to see what will happen next. And they had a announcement there. It says Finnwave's Roslair call cancelled. Zeebrugge, Roslair, Zeebrugge. MS Finnwave has encountered a technical problem and will be repositioned to Zeebrugge for immediate repairs in order to return to service on Tuesday next week, which is actually today, the 18th of November. The cargo on board will be discharged in Zeebrugge and upon customer demand, reloaded onto MS Finnpulp on Saturday, 15th of November. And then it shows the schedule of the MS Finnpulp. So they had their departure on the 15th from Zeebrugge and arrived Monday, 17/11/2025. And that was in Roslair, and that was the ship, the Finnpulp. So they took their cargo. Because the Finnwave lost all power, I was curious to what kind of propulsion they use. So they have a main engine. They have actually two, which is a Wärtsilä W8L46F, which is a 4-stroke engine, 8-cylinder, 460, which is 46 centimeter. So the cylinder, the inside diameter is 46 centimeter, and they are both combustion engines totaling 20,000 kilowatts, 27,192 horsepower total. And then the propellers, they have two controllable pitch propellers. They have bow thrusters, 2 times 1100 kilowatt each. To give you a better understanding of the setup of the propulsion system on RoRo ships, here's a good example. So we have 1 and 2 main engines, and there's a reduction gear here, and then you have a propeller shaft, and then you have a CPP, a controllable pitch propeller on the aft right over here. So why do they do this kind of setup? Well, on a RoRo, you want to keep the engine room space low. Instead of having one big tall engine, you want to have 2 smaller ones so you can keep the engine space low, so you can use all the deck space for cargo, for rolling on and rolling off trucks and trailers above you. So that is why they have this setup. Now, the RPM from these main engines is probably close to 500 to 600 RPM. Now, you cannot spin a propeller at that kind of speed. That's just way too much. So they have this reduction gear in here, and it will reduce it somewhere between 80 and 120 RPM over here. Meaning that you can run the engines at a constant speed, and then the propeller can be changed. So the propeller pitch can be changed, and that way you have power immediately. So instead of like revving up the engine and waiting for it to start going, you already have the full power available because it's doing the constant RPM. But if you change the pitch of the propeller, which can happen instantly, then you instantly also have power. Now on RoRos, that is of course very handy because you're always maneuvering in tight spaces and you need to have that power to you available when you want. Here's a good photo of 2 controllable pitch propellers. So these will be turning at a constant speed, let's say 100 RPM. And then if you change the pitch forward or aft, that makes the ship go forward or aft. Another fun fact about the Finnwave is that it was built in 2012, but in 2018 they lengthened it by 30 meters, and that was done in Gdansk, Poland. Here is an article from 2018. It says Finnlines exercises option to lengthen 2 more RoRo ships. And you can see here the first 2 vessels, the MS Finntide and MS Finnwave, have already been operating in their extended length. By the end of 2018, a further 2 vessels, the MS Finsky and MS Finsun, are due to be lengthened. And then they did another 2 vessels, the MS Finnbreeze and the MS Finnsea, is scheduled to be carried out September-December 2018. Now, according to Finnlines, each lengthened vessel will have a capacity increase of around 30%. So 30 meters, 30%. After the modification, the vessel is 217.7 meters long and has a capacity of around 4,200 lane meters. Isn't it crazy that they slice these ships up in half and then add a new block of 30 meters in the middle, put it all back together and put it back to sea? Well, I read somewhere that it is much cheaper to lengthen a ship than to build a new one, obviously. But that is why they do this. I know they have done this with cruise ships as well, and also with other types of ships. So it just makes sense. Of course, I'm going to do more of these deep dive analysis and insider information videos. So don't miss out. Click that subscribe button right now. And also, if you want to see another video of mine, then watch this video right over here. See you next time.